communications consulting firm that serves the same city and has for a little over a year, just to help you all be informed and engaged throughout all of the things going on in the city. This is my colleague Morgan Terrell, and we are here tonight to help facilitate this community conversation series. So tonight's event is the first of many community conversations events that we're going to be having specifically on the topic of expansion exploration. The purpose of these is to go over various aspects of this process and topics to make sure that you all are informed and that you're able to engage in dialogue. And so the purpose for tonight is to be able to go through a presentation, explain a lot of information, specifically an overview on annexation and the process in general. That's what we'll be covering tonight. And then we will have a time for dialogue, community conversation, with question and answer between you all and the speakers. So just wanted to kind of cover that for you guys. We're going to go over the next few items.
Yes, so tonight we have two different ways that you can participate. We would love to hear from you, either through a questionnaire conducted through this QR code or link. Whatever questions you have throughout the event tonight, you can submit through this, whether now or ongoing throughout the presentation. But if you don't want to do it that way, we will also have an open Q&A live time after the presentation ends. So you have both options in terms of how to participate. I'm going to go back to this slide now. I also just want to set the tone a little bit for the ground rules and the forum here tonight. We do ask that everyone engage respectfully and with acknowledgement of the time that they're using when they ask questions. This is not a time for public comment, but rather focused questions around the topics at hand. So we just ask that you engage with us that way. And then I do want to just allude to a few different housekeeping items. There are restrooms over here in the hallway. There's also snacks in the back. And if anyone needs translation services, Tatiana's in the back over here, and there are headsets available if you would like translation. And then if at any point you need to step out, please feel free to do so. Just re-enter quietly if possible. And you can go ahead and silence your phones and devices now as well if you're able to do that.
Also on the link, we can go back to that. In addition to being able to submit questions, there's actually some questions that we have for you as well, just to understand your thoughts, priorities, concerns, all of those sorts of things. So again, if you want to participate in that portion of the questionnaire, we encourage you to do so as well through that QR code or link. Okay, so next we're just going to share with you who is going to be presenting tonight. Okay, so tonight, as part of the presentation, you will have Mayor Alma Hernandez and Vice Mayor Jenny Dawson, City Manager Brett Kabula, and Deputy City Manager Jim Ramirez. And we're going to go ahead and start with Mayor and Vice Mayor to come up and start the presentation. How you all doing?
Yeah. I know it's been a long day for some of you to know by some of the business this morning. All evening. Andrew, good evening. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? No. No.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Look at that. All right. Well, thank you so much, all of you, for being here tonight. As you mentioned, this is our first community conversation meeting. I want to first say that I'm so grateful that you have time to be here today. I know many of you have a lot of things going on, so I'm really grateful for your time.
We're here tonight, as you already heard, to talk about the Suisun expansion, a topic I know has generated a lot of interest, curiosity, and understandably many questions. That's exactly why these community conversations are so important. We wanted to make sure that we provided a different space than the city council chambers that create very limited ways in which we can engage. So this is much more of a space that's really dedicated to our residents and to our members of our community at large who are here with us this evening. For me, it's not just about sharing information, it's also about making sure that all residents, regardless of where they live, whether it's right here in downtown Suisun, or all the way across the way to Peterson Ranch, or Lower Ranch, or to the Coy Creek area, or Public area, or Heritage Park area, or Blossom area, wherever our residents live, are here to be able to provide not only the city opportunity to review on this topic and listen in, but also because it matters in how we do this together. This is a journey of big expansion occurs, and how we continue to shape our community for generations to come. And that's why it's vital that we work together throughout that process. I don't expect that we'll have all the answers tonight, but I do expect that our team works diligently to address your questions to the best of their ability. We're still kind of early in the process, but for me, it's really important that members of our community at large know this and where Suisun is in that process and what to continue to expect as we move forward. This is important so it helps us ensure that we're making decisions that reflect the values and priorities and the needs of our entire community. My commitment to you that the city will continue to create spaces in which we can gather to have dialogue, to listen to questions, listen to our community, to be able to provide information that's clear throughout the process as it continues, and to listen to the voices in the room and beyond. So thank you for being here and for stepping into this process alongside us. Together we can shape the future for Suisun in a way that it honors our history, strengthens our community, and prepares us and empowers us for the opportunities ahead of us.
Thank you, Mayor Hernandez. And so I as well want to thank you all for coming out this evening. Our city, as a council, we have all officially have come together. We're all been here for 2 years. I myself am a lifelong community resident, born and raised here in Suisun City, and here again with my heritage and my own business. Coming into city council 2 years ago, we as a council really have been struggling fiscally, financially, really trying to identify how we can move our city forward for the next 50 plus years. Coming in, we had to straight go to our residents and say, hey, we're struggling here. We had to go out and put a tax ballot initiative for a Measure S to be able to increase our tax revenue just to be able to sustain our city with the limited amount of services that we currently already have, which is way below the minimum of where we should be and what our community deserves. So as a council, we have embarked on this journey to explore. We have agreed to explore what it looks like in the annexation. We haven't seen the studies. We haven't got all of the reports. We are on this journey together, and it takes us communities coming together with us to explore these concepts to even see this. So tonight, as we're all here, and we continue to have these conversations with our community, it is critical that you guys are here with us to have a conversation so we can see if anything is feasible, how we can, as a community, come together to build our future for the next generations to come. So with that, I know we're going to go ahead and do a little bit more on the presentation organization, but we appreciate you being here this evening, and we hope that you continue to follow us. We have another event coming up in the month of October, and it's important that you're going to be here to express your opinions so we understand what matters to our community. So thank you.
And one of the things that I do want to note is you see the mayor and vice mayor to kick off this event today. As this journey continues, you'll see the other members of our council in order to avoid what we call a quorum. That's the majority of council being in the same space talking about a city business item. We are limited to 2 members of the council today. And so you'll continue to see that, and you'll see the members represented change over the course so everybody has an opportunity to participate. So I think at this time, we're going to go ahead and begin with this. Just to do some level setting on what is annexation. That's the number one question that we're receiving throughout the kick off of this process.
Suisun City is exploring expansion through annexation, an effort aimed at addressing long-standing challenges and unlocking new opportunities for growth. Years ago, a bold redevelopment plan set the foundation for Suisun's transformation into the vibrant community it is today. This expansion effort carries that same spirit forward, reflecting the city's ongoing commitment to smart growth and long-term prosperity. As the smallest city in Solano County, Suisun City has faced financial challenges and limited space to grow. In January 2025, City Council proposed annexation as a forward-thinking way to support future developments and sustainability. So, what is annexation? Simply put, it's the process of expanding city boundaries to include nearby land that isn't currently part of the city. This would allow Suisun to expand city limits, plan for future development, attract business, and extend services like police, fire protection, and road maintenance to more areas. The annexation process is handled by the city and the local agency formation commission, so it doesn't require a public vote and comes at no cost to local taxpayers. In fact, developers cover the cost of new infrastructure, while the city benefits from increased property and sales tax revenue without raising taxes on residents. This innovative approach to growth supports Suisun's general plan, protects key assets like Travis Air Force Base, and gives the city more control over how and where growth happens. Community-driven expansion opens the door to greater economic opportunity, housing, local jobs, and services for everyone. Together, we're planning for a bright and thriving future in Suisun City.
So when we kicked off this question back in January, one of the things we recognize as a city is that we don't have industry. We don't have land to bring in industry to Suisun. A lot of the comparisons that we have is with, for example, the city of Dixon, because our population size is pretty close. The difference is that the city of Dixon has a lot of land that includes the ability to have warehouses, has the ability to sell cars, have a car dealer. They can sell boats, they have a boating location. They have land for agriculture. They have been able to strategically encompass all of that as they continue to grow as well. Suisun doesn't have that opportunity because we're limited and restricted by land. So we don't have the opportunity to bring in industries unless we expand our land capacity to be able to attract businesses and industry for jobs and for the tax revenue that we need. A lot of the things that we see out in the community is the needs to fix our infrastructure, like our streets, for example, to increase our public safety. All of that takes tax dollars, and this is one of the ways that we're able to contribute that capacity. So we're currently looking at annexing the property owned by the California Fund, and that is the land to the east of us, and that's the land I think many of you are very familiar with that entity out in the community. So we've entered into what's called a reimbursement agreement. That says that the city council has entered formally into a contract with California Forever as an entity. Each one of us bringing our teams, our legal teams and our consultants to navigate what the process to move forward looks like. And so today is an opportunity to continue to have that conversation, to share as much as we can publicly in regards to where we are in that process. It's going to be a multi-year process to really go through the entire journey. And so a lot of the members of the community have been really impatient about, well, tell us where we are. Even though we voted for the opportunity to explore this back in January, we're still in the early stages of this process. Just to provide a temperature check, in about 4 months it'll be a year, and we have not really made that progress to say this is where we're going to land. We've just started the foundation about what that looks like to ensure we have community benefits to Suisun City. I would say this when I talk about the community, that Suisun City is punching above its weight. A lot of people didn't think that we would be able to even bring such a large entity to the table to even negotiate with us. We are being very strategic, and we absolutely understand what is at stake for our community. But what's at stake is that we will continue to tax our residents if we are unable to bring in tax dollars. Now, will we land with the annexation? Actually, we don't know the answer to that. The answer might be no. The answer might be that the studies come back and say this is not feasible for Suisun City. but we will know the actual answers once the story is complete, and the council at the time will be able to make those determinations then. Do we want to move on to the? Yeah.
Yeah, no, Mayor, I think you saw that beautifully. Just as the Mayor had mentioned, you know, we have been treating, we are landlocked, right? The landscape is the last opportunity that we have to be able to get additional land. Many years ago, we had the opportunity, all the way out to Sunrise, right, and it ended up being annexed out into Station Aeron. It ended up being annexed over to Fairfield. So that whole industrial area, part of that once was given influence to the city, we missed that opportunity. We can't afford another opportunity here in the street area.
And I will note this, California forever tends to bring different sentiments for people. We're very, very much aware of that. Some people have clear distrust, some people can hear.
And fear. Are you guys too hot? You can keep the AC off.
Volume!
No. Okay, can we turn the AC off? It's pretty loud. If you guys get too hot,
Switch it off. Yeah.
What I was going to quickly say, can you hear me? Yeah. But I was going to quickly note, and I always want to acknowledge, California forever, which some members of our community have created a level of distrust. We're not here to advocate for California forever. We're here to advocate for the city of Suisun City and its opportunity for expansion and to study that opportunity. We're here to say yes to Suisun City having the opportunity to determine, does this make feasible sense? Is this an opportunity to go forward with? And what should we be considering in that journey? So it's really more about us doing our due diligence and putting Suisun City first for the Suisun City leaders. I'll go ahead and kick it off to Christina.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I appreciate it. So, the one thing I think we have been consistent with as a city for the last 18 or so months that we've been on our broader resiliency journey is that we are seeing today. As both the mayor and vice mayor articulated, we have an opportunity to explore an expansion here that is the one shot at exploring it. If we don't look into it today and the value that can bring our residents and frankly the region over time, it could happen on its own, and so soon we'll be out of luck, as we've talked about with prior opportunities around Jelly Belly and Budweiser and different things. And then it becomes difficult to operate as a city on our own. And so it's important to know that we are not a one-track way of doing this. So when we got here 18 months on this broader resiliency journey, we talked about it in a multifaceted manner. So the first was, hey, we need to pass a tax measure, right? Like that is a survival reality that we needed for the next 15 years to figure something out. And we all rallied around that, the community rallied around that, 70% of the community said yes, buy time so you all can figure out a better way to survive for decades, not years, right? And that's been our big motto, it's decades, not years. And then we said, okay, we know infill development has to be step one, and we have to parallel track something else. We didn't know at that time what the third leg of the stool was going to be. At the time, it was like, okay, let's focus on infill, and as it evolves, let's see where we can pivot and be nimble to the next thing that will actually be the way to survive. And the reason I say that is we have 15 infill projects going on right now. We presented that to council at the last council meeting. It's on our website. Feel free to take a look at our infill development page. And it's important because it is all the properties on the waterfront to be constructed and developed for the next 2 years. It's a opportunity for everyone infill development to show that they're committed to Suisun beyond just the expansion to do significant redevelopment of downtown. It's a 34-acre site to sell for mixed-use development. We're going to turn the Caltrans lot on Lots Way, we're going to flip it with them to make that mixed-use development. So when everyone says, well, why don't you do infill first? I will tell you, we are. We're doing this in parallel because we don't have the time to do infill for the next 5 to 7 years to be done, get all that up, and then go, okay, what's left for us to do? Because infill alone, when we do the math, at the highest and best use, we can do it. And remember, you can't build 20-story skyscrapers in suburbia, right? It's just not feasible in reality for developers who want to do that. So we have to be realistic. We're talking about 4- and 5-story buildings, right? That will maximize the amount of residential flexibility, so from townhomes to condos to single-family homes, so we have a better variety throughout the city, as well as businesses. But as the mayor and vice mayor mentioned, industry is still a problem. Jobs are still a problem here. We still have people commuting a ton for an hour plus to go to work, right? And we need to improve that. So we're taking our infill plan, we're running with it, we're taking a 10-year infill plan and trying to do it with 5 developers, which is not easy, but we have a very talented team. Our new development director, as Mr. Bermudez, is now deputy city manager, in charge mostly of this massive expansion conversation. Ricky is our new development director coming from the city of Tampa. For him and another consultant, Ben Smith, the former community development director there, did all of what you see now in First Year. So the Andaz, the Archer, Stanley Ranch, all the good restaurants that are down there, the transformation of that downtown Napa product was at their leadership. And we have them out here to do our infill plan while we focus on expansion. So we are parallel paths. So in that resiliency of that stool I told you about, it was that sales tax measure, was all this infill, and the third thing became in January the opportunity for expansion. And that really is the seeds that they know what we're talking about. It's what the mayor and vice mayor mentioned. We don't know the outcome of that study. We are doing it with them. We are going through the process of getting these technical studies. But all that will happen in time. But we are waiting around. That infill plan is going to be happening regardless, but it just isn't enough. City of 30,000 people, we should be at about 45 million in revenue. In the general fund, we're about 32, 33. If we do all the infill, it maybe gets us up to 40. And the gap, how I get there is efficiency and there is a benefit and economy of scales of growing at times, especially the way we're going to look at doing business from a service delivery standpoint. And that will kind of lift all boats. So this isn't also okay, we're going to expand and forget about what we call current system. No. It is going to rise together. We are going to create this really amazing waterfront entertainment zone down here and all the redevelopment we're doing, and then it'll expand out into what we're going to see potentially as we move forward in the expansion. And so I just wanted to give the perspective from kind of the 30,000 foot view that it's not just expansion that's happening right now. We're doing it on multiple fronts. So I'll turn it now over to Deputy City Manager Bermudez to kind of go over some of the nuts and bolts of what we're trying to do here in the annexation.
Good evening. Good evening, everybody. My name is Jim Bermudez. I'm the Deputy City Manager. My introduction, I just wanted to inform you that I've been with the city for about 4 years. Been working actively on a lot of the projects that you see currently built in the last 4 years. And some of them are improved. Definitely enjoyed my time with the city. It's been a crazy 4 years that have passed, and here we are today, an opportunity arose, and just to manage our attention, we kind of seize the moment and kind of move forward and see where we go with this particular project. Professionally, I've been involved in government and as a city planner for 26 years, and been doing basically anything and everything from redevelopment, current development, to specific plans that you see here that we're going to talk about tonight. But this one, as I say, is probably on steroids, to say it bluntly. But any specific plan really is all there with the same principles and same issues and same topics from experience, I will tell you. One thing I'd like to highlight moving forward is with this specific plan, and looking at the size and scale of the specific plan, you'll see there 15,700 approximately in size and scale. We all know that the project has been around for probably the last couple of years, and there's been assertions of the size and scale of the project, anywhere from 24,000 square feet or 24,000 acres of development. But here's the reality. The project coming forward, eventually, if we are to get an application, which I think is very likely we will, from an applicant, is going to be anywhere from 15,700 acres approximately, or even scale from a phasing standpoint a little bit smaller. And that information will come forward as we learn more information. I think the other thing that's important to highlight and to mention as well is that, like any development project, we as a city do talk to the developers. So as I state various areas of information, those are coming from conversations that the city has had already with the developer. This is not abnormal, this is pretty normal as we gear up for any type of application. So I want to put that out that the city has been involved in discussions with the applicant moving forward. What I'm going to highlight too about the 15,000 acres of the project, it's been scaled down. In talking with the applicant, they have listened to the public on some of the regional concerns, Travis Airport space, environmental, traffic, and so what they try to do and what they're going to be doing when they hand off an application is present an application where they do provide that buffer to Travis Airport space. They do consider control of funding and all the environmental effects of a new development project that that presents, as well as considerations on traffic and just imagining, how you can put a number of what we've all heard. It varies, and I'll know shortly, really where that number lands of new development, new people into this region. So they listen. So they're implementing different concepts and ideas within their plan to mitigate, to internalize the growth and the impacts to the region. And I think more will come as we progress with the actual formal application. And I already mentioned this just recently. I think a key word with their project and moving forward is internalization. Having this job housing balance. I think, from experience in my career, I've worked on various specific plans where I'm meeting with the developer, they say, hey, I want to do a specific plan. And for those that don't follow land use, kind of get the gist of everything I'm referring to, I'll simplify it in the sense of we've all been to a city and we see these colorful patterns on a map that represent housing, represent commercial areas. Well, that's a specific plan, but then there's more to it in a lot of other areas. But what I can say in conversations and discussions related to the jobs housing balance with this particular plan is that they are capturing a moment where there is a sector of innovation, technology that's increasing and expanding, as we all know. Just referencing AI is a good example. I didn't talk about that last year. It's on the mind of everybody this year and moving forward, and just how the pros and cons of AI can help everybody moving forward. But what I mean internalizing is that what we have learned is they are actually soliciting and have letter of intent with various sectors of companies that are committing to build and actually invest within this community. And in doing so, those particular investors are saying, hey, we want a community to come to this community, but where are the people going to come? And so capturing that question, what this particular applicant has done is they've said to the city, hey, look we have this sector of government or sector of business coming in, but we need housing, we need rooftops. So for me, as a planner, what is very different in this specific plan is that you're going to actually see active development. What that means is the moment that, if it is approved, you will see a combination of not only the industrial sector, innovation sector being developed, but you're gonna need those people to actually locate there. Because what they don't want is kind of what's been out there, which is congestion on Highway 12, congestion on 80. They are trying to basically mitigate that, internalize it, so that when these sectors of businesses come into Suisun City, if it is approved, that all the people who live within the community to some degree, I'm not gonna kid you, some people would commute still, but it would have a place for these people to actually live and work. So that's what they're trying to achieve. Lastly, what they're planning for is a 50-year growth plan. This is not all gonna happen in 5 years, okay, so I think we can all, kind of pull the nerves of the development. I think ultimately what we'll see is we'll see a 20-year plan and a 50-year plan. Obviously, there's gonna be sub-phases within those years of development and growth, but then there's gonna be responsibilities and mitigation that's actually gonna have to occur in order to move forward with further development. But professionally, I think, in talking with the group, I think likely we'll follow what you want. We'll probably see an interim phase initially if it is approved. Put a number, and I don't have that yet, of what that interim phase is. But let's be real. We're not gonna build a sewer plant. We're not gonna build a water plant. We're not gonna have all the necessary infrastructure on day one. So it's gonna have to happen over time. And that's where we'll get to this interim type of phase. That'll happen if it is approved moving forward. So what does that mean for the city to move forward in expansion? What that means for the city is we, in legal terms and state law, call it annexation. In simple terms, an annexation, imagine the eastern side of the city, which is where we'll be expanding. Imagine an attachment of additional area that would be Suisun City. And I'll get to a map. There's been questions about how does that look. I'll share that detail with you a little bit later here. So imagine this growth, this expansion for Suisun City happening on the east side of the community. In order to do that, though, there are various requirements for state law and regulations that every jurisdiction in California needs to follow. That comes from the Local Agency Coordination Commission, and they will ultimately be the group and the commission that will approve the annexation. Don't get me wrong, we still have to go through a planning commission review, still have to go through the city council review, but ultimately, if those two bodies approve the annexation and LAFCO board does not, then the annexation will come forward. Okay? What the city will need to move forward, every city has what's called a sphere of influence, more or less like a growth area of the city. Well, naturally, the city never contemplated going beyond Walter's Road, it would take, plus or minus a mile or so. So our sphere of influence would have to be updated. So part of the process of going through the annexation is expanding the sphere of growth. And what that would mean, as part of the application for annexation and bringing in a new community, it would mean that that sphere would have to expand to capture this new growth and new community east of the city. Additionally, the city will be required to complete a municipal services review. In the planning world, we call these MSRs, and a municipal service review is basically a document and a snapshot that is required by state law for every agency to have on file. The LAFCOs require cities to have them updated every 5 years. I work with agencies that I've seen them updated every 10 years. It really is a call out by that local agency commission board. But in this case, because we're contemplating growth as a community, we will have to update our MSR. What's in an MSR? The MSR is a snapshot of time that evaluates holistically, comprehensively, the health of the city. We look at the fiscal association of the city, we look at the operation elements of the city, we look at public services of the city, we look at capital improvements like infrastructure and so forth, and we evaluate that and we mirror that up with our budget. And so ultimately, it's not a yes or no when it's an MSR. It's just an overview to provide information to LAFCO so they can make an informed decision on the structure and health of the city. So all these areas will be covered in an evaluation by a consultant that will do the MSR for the city. And that will be one of the requirements that we have to get for annexation. With that said, as this information is pulled together, there is a requirement of annexation to be neutral, fiscal neutral. Basically, and I've heard it through the community for the last 3 months as I've been in the trenches on the project. The project and the people in the community should not pay for redevelopment. Well, fiscal neutrality and LAFCO says you're not going to. If there's any instance of that actually occurring within the MSR, within all the economic development studies that are necessary to evaluate roads, highways, infrastructure, etc., then the project cannot move forward because LAFCO would be able to make that finding. So it is incumbent on us as city staff, along with our consultants, to actually ensure that we make and maintain a neutrality and to be truthful. Given the applicant's willingness to invest in a downtown, we're hopeful that neutrality can actually be made on a positive front, that not only will we have the new community, but we're going to have investment into Suisun City as we know it, from way of new development and new growth. That's what we are desiring. That is a requirement that we want to achieve moving forward with the new project. Lastly, we need to be compliant with California Environmental Quality Act. That requirement says evaluate various resource areas, traffic, land use, public services, soils, biology, and go on and on, which were 13 to 12 or so sections. The city will need to complete that. We will hire consultants to complete that document. We will evaluate any of the impacts. From those impacts, we will determine if any of those impacts rise to a level where there could be required mitigation by the applicant to fulfill an obligation of that impact and that issue, or we would then after that, go through the process of getting that environmental document approved with the city council and the planning commission moving forward. I would say that along with that approval of the council and the planning commission, separately, LAFCO reviews the environmental document as well. So there's two streams of the document by a government agency, one the legislative body of the city council, and two, LAFCO as we move forward. So, what does the project bring for the city? In discussions with the applicant, what I can tell you, and I kind of hit on this area, because it is an active specific plan, you are going to see jobs coming as a result of this project moving forward. And you're going to see jobs coming pretty quickly. As I mentioned, they have a letter of intent, there's commitments to build certain types of industries out there. So you're going to need those people to come in. And the people that we're referring to are those that are, anywhere from tradesmen to tech bros, you name it, that will be part of this new community and our community as we see it today with an expansion. In addition, what we will see is an enhanced education system. Currently, the project sits kind of majority within the River Delta School District, but the city is working on avenues to explore how the project could benefit the Fairfield Suisun Unified School District, and more to come on that. Initially, this will be attainable housing, and looking at their data, one thing that is very creative with this project is there's no residential zoning, so you are not going to see 6,000, 5,000 square foot lots. You're going to see smaller units, anywhere from 1,200 square feet to about 1,900 square feet. So this will be an attached project to move forward, more densified, more people, and an active community. And these particular units will be attached, so the marketplace will drive a lower type of cost for these type of units rather than a traditional single-family home within this area. So we'll see that. And like I said, you're going to see a different lifestyle because of this intensification. people, we're gonna have actual activity from the moment that the project goes live and is actually developed, that people are gonna live and work and within that community. And then also, you're gonna see expansion of the city's tax base. That's gonna support current city, infrastructure as we know it. Like I said, net neutrality. What we're trying to achieve is we will get net neutrality, but we want a little bit more. So what that means is, yes, the new community will have to hire new staff. Will have to hire and operate the staff to operate on these new improvements. But it will not be isolated. These individuals that will work for the city will work for all of Suisun City and cover the actual current Suisun City as we know it today. Also, greater local control of land use. Let's just say it, at some point, if this project doesn't come along, at some point there could be another project that comes along that wants to grow eastward of Suisun City. And I think, as the city manager highlighted, or the vice mayor, we've all been through Jala Valley, we've all been through Green Valley, and where was Suisun City when all that happened? That's the question. So this taking control right now is critical to the growth of the city because we just don't know what is going to happen for the long-term future of this area. And then lastly, the project will bring stability to the city as highlighted by the vice mayor and the mayor, and then also aligned with our economic development growth and resiliency that is articulated by Brett Seaman. So, I'm not going to lie, what are some of the challenges? It's going to be cost of infrastructure. But remember, net neutrality, this is not going to be at the expense of the public. We have various consultants in the financial world that are and they're very high caliber to review and evaluate the costs associated with growth of this scale. And again, that is going to be a topic of conversation that will go deeper in with the application submittal. And then lastly, managing traffic and congestion. Look at, I mentioned that these guys are signing a letter of intent to businesses. Just practically and logically, I look at that being a condition where if you're a business wanting to locate in a new community, and the first thing the business asks the developer, well, where are these people going to come from? And they say, well, they're going to come 15 or 20 miles down the road. I don't think you're going to get offers to be signed a letter of intent because logically the question becomes, that is not a survivable, that is not a realistic scenario. So the point that I'm making is that when it comes to traffic congestion, yes, maybe in the interim there could be some effect. Yes, there will be public improvements that are necessary as a result of the project on highway development. But ultimately, they will internalize that to minimize the associated impacts, lesser livability, based on the impacts that will come from the environmental impact. Again, I think what's critical too is we want to preserve the community's character, the downtown, and the city as a whole. So this particular development and moving forward is just going to do that by making a commitment to infill areas of the city, and then in the long term, actually making investment through the process of commitments to existing Suisun City as today. And then I think I would point in reference that ultimately we would enter into a development agreement, which is kind of somewhat of a financial as well as a commitment type of negotiation document ultimately, where the city can capture additional funding, additional concessions that can be made to better improve all of Suisun City moving forward. And lastly, yes, this is very complex. A lot of legality. We have a host of consultants that are assisting us to evaluate all the studies and the regulatory requirements that are necessary to approve a project of this nature and caliber. And those are all part of the city staff moving forward. So when it comes to a timeline, what we're looking at in the near term, we will see an application likely submitted to the city best guess at this point sometime in October, quite possibly. Along with that application, we'll run the necessary feasibility studies, all the tech reports that address traffic, address infrastructure, address water, all those various areas of concern that we have heard as staff as a city. And those will be the reports that staff will be able to review and evaluate, and determine feasibility of the project moving forward. More meetings of public engagement like this one will occur as well. And then entering at some point into a draft environmental impact report. Part of the draft environmental impact report will be what's called a notice of preparation and scoping meeting. Basically, the notice of preparation will follow after the application submittal. And what the NOP does is it alerts the community that there's a new project and that it allows the community to make comment of areas of concern from an environmental standpoint. And it will give you guidance on how to do that with that NOP. And you can submit that document or submit that summary and write-up to the city, and that will be part of the record. That will be part of the process of the evaluation, where the city would have the responsibility to ensure that whatever comment was made, that is taken into consideration and built within the actual environmental report as the environmental report is released. Additionally, as I mentioned, we will have to update our MSR, Municipal Service Review, which will help us get to our sphere of influence. We'll have to go through that process, which in our case, LAFCO is allowing us to do the sphere of influence update along with the annexation at the same time. So that'll be a full package, but we'll have to complete the MSR report. Again, I made reference to negotiated agreements. This is the development agreement that the city will embark on with a future developer moving forward. And then ultimately, we will get to planning commission recommendations, city council determination and evaluation. And then, as I mentioned at the beginning, then we'll have to go through the LAFCO approval should the project get approved by the legislative body, city council, city. Lastly, I'm getting close to finishing here. There's been conversation about, well, what does it look like? You know, how does this city go from where it presently sits, as we know it, on the east side, Walters, Mounts and so forth, that area, the air base, softball field, getting everybody kind of a geography kind of lens, to the new community. Well, this is kind of how we do that. This particular annexation map has been reviewed by our legal counsel, as well as the applicant's legal counsel. And what I can share with you is that when we look at future development of this project, it will be that area where it says Suisun expansion specific plan. That's the 15,700 acres. That's the plan area. Just west of that is what's called the area plan. And that area plan is the connection point to the eastern side of Suisun City. The distinction between the specific plan and the area plan is this, is that the specific plan will contain all the development standards of land use and so forth, and including capital improvements related to the development of the project. The area plan will bring in whatever the county existing and current zoning and requirements are, will be maintained. So basically, moving forward, we have no intention to change any of the land use within the area plan. So if there's anybody here that fits in that area, albeit there's not that many households in that area, you will continue to operate as you do. You will continue to have sewer, you have those types of hookups and connections. You can continue to do that per state law, but we're not changing anything going west of the specific plan area. It will all remain the current zoning that you find in today's county zoning and general plan area. That would include the Lemby Industrial Park, for those that know a little bit more of this area. That will retain all its rights and development standards moving forward. And then lastly, the makeup of the area plan, it's roughly about 7,200 acres in the area as you get outside of the specific plan area. So next steps, is to continue the community conversations and have meetings over the next several months into this year and next year. As I mentioned, the city should be receiving a formal submittal of an application shortly from the applicant. Again, we'll have to prepare a notice of preparation, which will alert the community and the community can respond with comments on a summary of the information within the notice of preparation. And then, of course, as I mentioned, staff would then have to work with our consulting groups on the review of all the technical analyses that are going to be required to move the project forward. So at this point, this concludes my presentation, and thank you for having me.
So right now, we're going to start the question and answer portion, and I just want to remind everyone, the purpose of the event tonight is to be able to inform everyone and to answer your questions and bring clarity. So we just ask, we intentionally set up community conversations to be a two-way dialogue. You know, in council meetings, you cannot have back and forth conversations. You're only able to make public comment. We want you to be able to ask questions and get answers here, but we want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to ask a question. So please, no public comments, but ask a question if you have a question so we can provide clarity and answers. If you have a question, raise your hand and Morgan will come around with a microphone, and then the appropriate person will be able to answer and provide clarity for you.
Yes, there's a lot of things wrong with Suisun. In danger of flooding. We got areas that look like picking poles all over the place. We have trouble holding up the code enforcement officers, police detectives, and fire people. And I'm just curious, since 2015, we didn't have a deficit, we didn't pay a $2 million deficit. How much of the deficit is going to be since then? Because in 2016, we're at only $2 million.
So I think a couple things to level set some of that that will help everybody is, the first is, you have to remember in the early 2000s, and I compliment then city manager Najumi, Cameron Najumi, and then Mayor Tim Sperry for using city development as a tool to bring Suisun to just where we are today. So the waterfront, what you see, a lot of the downtown development, that is because they used a tool in the state called redevelopment to get us there. It was essentially a property tax process the state allowed to allow cities to essentially get more property tax to deal with decade-long blighted issues. And so that brought us to today. What happened in 2012 is the state said, yeah, we're good with that. And they pulled the redevelopment rug out from under all the cities that are using it. And so since Suisun was so heavily redevelopment focused, it really got massively hit. And it almost took the city out, to be quite honest with you. It was such a big hit. And so they had to do subsequent tax measures that they did in 2016 to try to save the city. But we were saving the city at that point at a 70% staffing level, give or take, from a service delivery standpoint. So even if at the time those balance quote unquote got budgeted, they got balanced because we weren't providing the level of service required. And then what has happened in the subsequent almost 10 years is that we've talked about this in many meetings over the last year plus, is we just bob our head above water and we go back down, and we bob our head above water. And so what this is trying to do on both the Lincoln and the expansion is just get out of it and create a glide path for the next 50 years of high-level service sustainable consistency. When it comes to fire departments, we had pretty good recruitment on fire department. Police about 3 years ago was difficult because our police pay was, what I'll say, it's not just the lowest in the county for police officers, but it was the lowest by a Grand Canyon level chasm, which is, again, if you're balancing your budgets off of that, that's not appropriate service delivery. And so what council did, and I applaud their leadership, is they give the level sets of this to retain the top talent in these core areas of service. And so they did that. They made these changes, both by our employees and other areas, to essentially ensure that we can retain talent and retain staff. And we've been able to do that. There are some areas where that is just a natural progression, and code enforcement is one of them, where throughout the industry, it's just hard to maintain those job specs, so people usually move on because code enforcement has kind of a ceiling as far as the growth ability of most organizations. They typically move on to other areas of government to do bigger and better things. And so we're working through that, but we are continuing to address those issues. But generally, I'll say on the staff allocated in the budget, we definitely are seeing retention at a much better level. The quality of the outcomes that we're seeing are definitely happening at a much higher level. But part of what I talked about earlier was we have a cap on doing that, right? And so, much like I said, there's an efficiency in being bigger, right? Much like anything, there's a fixed cost to run any city, whether you're 10,000 person community, which I've been city manager of, or you're 30,000 community like Suisun or Benicia, where I was the assistant CM. There is like a base level. And so it's harder to actually operate a 30 or 40,000 city than it is, in my experience of doing this, in 80 and 90,000. Doesn't mean you don't have problems, doesn't mean you don't have deficits. But the way we're approaching the staffing of how we look at the growth and the expansion is, how do we embed technology and efficiency in how we design for the applicant a city that expanded into systems? And what does that look like from a physical perspective that helps the operating perspective? And how do we use technology, not in a widget on our phone, but how do we use things like drones as first responders to actually cut the cost of service in some areas of how we do business? And there are examples. I am not recreating the wheel here. I think I do a pretty good job at my job, but this is all stuff that's been out there and proven. Elk Grove is a model. Elk Grove actually grew from 10,000 people to over 100,000+ today in 27 years. They have 15% of their calls plus that are actually closed on drones as first responders. That kind of stuff cuts down the cost of service, but still provides a high level of service to communities. And that's just one very small example of how you can see in Parks and Rec. There are other ways to do it. We're actually looking at autonomous lawnmowers as a beta program in Suisun City, so we'll never have someone sit on a lawnmower again. Because all of that provides adequate, high-level service for lower cost. And so that's how we're going to kind of address some of the current issues that we may see today as we kind of go into expansion. But I'll turn it over to the mayor to add in.
I wanted to answer part of your question, which is, when you talked about back in 2015, 2016, the council at the time actually never fixed the structural deficit. What they did in 2015, they identified that they had a $2 million surplus structural deficit. So what they did was go to the taxpayers. They said, can you pass a tax measure called Measure S to help bridge some of the funding needed for public safety, roads, all those pieces. That was 2016. They approved it for 10 years. So it was set to expire in 2026 next year. In that period of time, and one of the members of the public may not know our council very well, every single member of our council is currently sitting in the first term for the current seat. So this is my first term as mayor. Each one of my council members is their first term as members of council. So we really inherited what it was a very challenging financial issue. In the past, the city council, or the way that they would balance their budget, was by keeping salaries low, but we fell really behind competitive salaries in our areas. We have a huge loss of talent, and by managing a primarily volunteer fire department, which is since 2014, various laws changed in how fire departments are structured. And so that's where in 2020, that council, this is before our time, switched over to having fire department fully staffed. So those are the beginning changes of what has created a huge cost increase. By 2016, let me go back to that chapter here. By 2026, if it was set to expire, we were set to actually dissolve as a city if we didn't pass an extension to our tax benefit. So we were about to dissolve as a city. We were getting ready. We discussed it thoroughly for those who attended council meetings about our fiscal emergency. We decided to ask our residents, will you help us extend this tax measure for another 15 years while we work on development? Because we will see, how many of you have noticed, raise your hands real quick, a lot of empty parcels in downtown Suisun. Okay? that are going to constantly back to the city.
Can I ask a question actually directly to you? Can you please explain, with your, I think everybody can use one, that's fine, it's not that big of a mistake. Can you explain to me what Measure S, the new approval, why is it paying for executive raises only? Sorry? Why is it paying for executive raises only?
No, so Measure S is not allowed to pay for executive.
But we just approved, we approved Measure S because we're in such a dire financial need. Yet this recent council meeting, you guys approved raises for executive only.
So that,
Explain that please.
sure, happy to.
And also explain why the infill development for California Forever is like set in stone in the developmental calendar, like it's set in stone, like it's an actual plan, when we did not approve it.
Yeah, I can have our.
We were not considered, we were not asked.
So infill development is different than the expansion, the board has the question.
Yeah, that's on top of it.
Yeah, so let me go back to, part of the lack of why we haven't had infill development is because it was tied up in a contract with Main Street West, who is a master developer, for about almost 20 years or so. So we haven't been able to legally develop some of the internal parcels up until 2019, when that contract was dissolved. So that's why that's part of the issue that Suisun has had. A previous council tied up all of our hands legally for internal development. So that's new for us. To address part of your question, regarding Measure S. So Measure S, I have the chair of Measure S here. By law, all of those tax dollars have to go to what the taxpayers voted for it to go to. So it has to legally go to public safety, it has to go to things like roads, it has to go to things that support all of the areas that the taxpayers said it can go to. So you will notice all of those tax dollars, if you could look at our finances are very public, very transparent. We just had a really great, about 2 or 3 months ago, a joint council meeting with the Measure S committee meeting, which are residents that are appointed to be the tax dollars. They look at those tax dollars to ensure that they're being placed where the voters said that they're supposed to go to. They monitor all of the funding. All of those dollars go to exactly where the taxpayers stated they should go to. Now, in negotiations, now we'll go to the payroll salary. In negotiations, we have specific things that are already in contract, like COLAs, which is a cost of living adjustment to some of our unions. So what happens is when you increase part of the salary for one base, there are specific labor laws that require that the top salary has to be a proper of a percentage. I believe it's 5.
It ultimately depends on the agreements, but essentially, yes, there are triggers to the like any business corporation. So the organizational hierarchy of salaries kind of stays current. But what I will tell you is this, is broadly speaking, Suisun is 90% of the median of the other Bay Area cities around here. So whatever the middle salary is for a specific job class, we are 90% of that. So by no means is everyone significantly overpaid in the region. In fact, we're in the bottom tier of the region. Still, we're just better than the Grand Canyon that I identified in the very beginning of how we're trying to take a little bit of it. Because part of what we have to do all of these big things is talent. Just like any business, you gotta have talent. And talent needs to get paid, not the highest per se, because we all get in this world to do something and to make a difference in our roles in government. It isn't to become the richest person in the world. But you still gotta pay talent at a certain level or you're not gonna have it. I mean, that is not just the world we're in, but that is the generation that's coming up with below, even not an old man, but I'm an older man now compared to when I started, and that generation is even looking for that value for themselves as well. And so it's something we can't be blind to as government, or we're not gonna have anybody to do the work, and it's gonna get worse. You're not gonna have the creativity and the skill sets to get things done.
So I'll take it back then. Labor laws require that when the classification of your workforce is increased by a certain percentage, that buffer, I'll just say 5% to just default to percentage, has to remain in between some of the top steps. You create some issues legally with your labor force because of that. And so that's an overgeneralization. I will say none of our executives are making like super top dollar for the region. Except for one. No, actually, they're not either. Not in comparison to some of the other regions, and actually denied their own bonus that they're legally allowed to have. Also denied the bonus this year as well. Now, I'll return to you for that.
Yes, so we have another question here.
Is it on?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to ask these questions and to learn more about this process. I actually have two questions. The first is, it's my understanding that Rio Vista is, I'm not up to date on it, but I think they're also considering annexation. So my question regarding that is, how are you going to consider the overall impacts of growth plans to the region? And that we're not looking at Suisun City, the impacts that Suisun City would do in isolation. And then my second question is, this is a very, this process is very complicated, and I know that there are staff members that have been hired for this, but I still think that Suisun City staff is going to be taxed by this process. And I'm wondering, like, honestly, what is your strategy to be able to balance this ball at the same time as you're considering the best for Suisun City, especially with all the challenges that we have, including sea level rise?
Great questions, really thorough, good questions. So, for the first, any EIR has to have what's called a cumulative impact. So if a portion of what Rio Vista is going to do, and the mayor and I talk to their mayor consistently through recurring meetings to have these conversations, and as the weeks progress and months progress, we get deeper into discussion about essentially what would be a Rio Vista project relative to the expansion project. And the EIR will contemplate anything that is real and going to be an application within a certain number of years. The EIR will take into account all of that. Even development that isn't in our expansion but connected to it. So we have another project you may have heard of called Suisun Logistics. It has to take into account even that as part of this conversation. And so all of that cumulative effect is how we ensure that both from all of the what I'll call technical factors, the traffic, water, roads, and the environmental factors are all assessed under an EIR in that perspective. Great question. The second piece is we intentionally split the baby of the organization to ensure that I, as the city manager, run day-to-day operations, deal with all of the infill, deal with all of the kind of everything else you think of in the city, and then Deputy City Manager Bermudez handles all of the California Forever project. And so his experience in West Sac and all that he's done there really set him up well to lead this, and he has a group of consultants that is, and truly meaning some of the best in the industry, paid for by California Forever, so it's not on taxpayer dime, but controlled by us, to ensure that. So let's address the clap. So I think it's important. So you clap, but remember, all they do is pass us money to have the consultants under our contract and our authority. We don't want taxpayers to have the ability to have to pay for this expansion possibility, right? And we want to ensure that we can hire the best and the brightest, so we're not taxed. So Jim probably has, I don't know, 20 different people at various firms behind him as a staff, essentially. From Stantec, Stories is one of the best. So our CEQA attorney has, as a partner, a person that wrote literally the book on CEQA. Like, she was an author of the legislation that is now used. Like, we have some of the best and brightest firms doing this to ensure that we are getting the best advantage from the community perspective when we get deeper into this, and to ensure the technical analysis can be reviewed and evaluated in a way to ensure we're getting the best overall mitigation of our safety for the area as a whole. And so that's how we're splitting the baby to do it. I get updated, like any executive would, from Jim on projects, and I bring it brought into things I need to. But day to day, he handles CF, and I handle everything else, so we don't have this kind of who's on first, what's on second, to our organization. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, I'm just going to answer your last question. So currently, we have the Purple Sewer District leading the efforts on sea level rise in that area right now, specifically the climate adaptation plan that's going to be stated in 2034. They have they're doing a regional effort with Suisun City, the city of Fairfield, and the county. And we have our public works director on that. So we have a different source of funding and different agencies looking more at the technical piece. Although Suisun City brings in some of the input as your work in the climate environment and just provide some awareness in general about what's happening.
Yes. So I understand what you're saying, but it's still already impacting everybody and will continue to impact everybody. I think, like, the complexity of all of it. So, I'm just saying, like, I'm sure the mayor is impacted, that she has to know, she has to learn about what annexation is, what sea level rise is, what infill is, and, I think it is affecting everybody. So, I'm not saying, how are you going to do
I will tell you, as the operations leader of the organization, I can tell you that it isn't impacting people in a negative way. Like, again, Jim is a very experienced executive in doing this. I brought in people behind what he used to do as a development director that have massive experience in the city of Napa doing major infill development, major developers, billionaires as well, and all that comes with that, right? Like, so we are putting a team of people and experts around us, both consultants and staff, that are used to the horsepower that needs to happen to this, right? Including myself. Like, we are built to deal with this. By no means would I have ever even had this conversation in January with the city council if I thought we would be overwhelmed to the point of not being able to function. It's the opposite. I think we have stepped up and shown that from an infill perspective, from a day-to-day operations perspective, we continue to push on all we can do and are starting to really see some improvement there. Not where we want to be, but seeing improvement. And Jim has done a great job in managing this the last 7 months since the journey began in January with the conversations of exploration to get us to a point where we're hoping, like we said, in a month or two to have an application and then hopefully the NLP to follow. So I hear your concern. It's not lost on me, trust me. But we check in, we really assess each other in the organization in a way that we feel we're trying to identify where some of those pitfalls may be, and then we're going to plug those holes kind of going forward.
Okay, so we have a question here in the red shirt, and then next here in the hat, and then we'll continue.
I really appreciated the rundown of the deputy city manager. Very important. It brought, in my mind, a couple of questions and a couple of areas. And
You need to mic, please. Just hold it.
Yeah. Okay. When you talk about in October feasibility, and previously to that, you mentioned traffic, water supply, environment, etc. The water supply was the question I had. When we are going to open up our city size and so forth, obviously water supply is going to be an issue. Since it's all under the auspices of Suisun City as we get our input, how is it going to affect the original questions that for citizens of Suisun? Will this eventually evolve into 2 districts? Will, depending on the water supply, what they can procure and what they use? Or is it going to be just one, and as water gets more scarce, everybody's going to bear that burden? Pursuant to that question is, and again, how will the next route or beyond that handle? So that's one of those. The other one you said is that staff is hired to deal specifically with the development, which obviously is like a good idea. But the question would be is, how autonomous are they? As the city grows, does that mean the council size grows? Does it mean that there's just a second tier underneath them? No, that's an artificial question.
Thank you, good question. Last one I'll let city manager answer, dealing with the council. What I can say about water, great question. Speaking with the applicant, we've asked that same question. What I can give you right now based on feedback is one regulatory side of things. Every new type of development project that requires some form of general plan amendment or new specific plan is required to go through a process that's called a water supply assessment. So WSA, if we refer to it, will cover the points of your question, which is where is the water coming? Is it groundwater? Is it contracts from farmers downstream, upstream, whichever area? Is it going to be carried and wheeled in from the existing river that's nearby? All those answers are going to come through that WSA. And then in addition, along with the answers, is going to be an evaluation of is it feasible and as it relates to cost to the consumer, to the public. And that's the part where, again, don't have the information, but what I would say is refer back to a requirement of LAFCO of net neutrality. We can't put the costs obviously on the current rate bidders. That's what we can't do. That's something that they would be looking for. And then further, I would say, in speaking with the applicant, surprisingly, I would say there's a lot of actual activity in the water market where farmers are actually giving up their actual contracts. So it's kind of an actual reversal of what may be perceived out there, that they are talking to various entities, farmers mostly, that are wanting to work out an agreement of some sort. So I think there's more to come on that. Great question. I'm curious myself. I know with groundwater, there's a lot of legality and a lot of regulation that is a part of that. So it'll be interesting to see how they tackle that moving forward. To the question regarding the council and operations.
Yeah, so the operation structure that will kind of evolve as the city evolves. So like any city, as you grow, there's a point where it makes sense to actually have more council members, right? You go from maybe 5 to 7. We'll have to see what point that is. That obviously probably isn't in the first 10 years, right? 10,000, 20,000 people, 30,000 people. It's probably when we get to numbers much greater than that down the line, we'll have that dialogue. But I could see, in the 20-year plan, yeah, tail into that. Could we be 7 council members? Could we be districted like Fairfield? There's a possibility. We'll go through kind of a legal analysis to see what makes sense. And that's also just sheer representation is what it needs to be, right? So at some point, 5 may not be representative enough of the population dynamics, so we need to increase that. And how staff changes that's part of the fiscal analysis that Jim talked about. So we're going to do one of the more complex fiscal analysis with our consultant you can see to figure out, again, what makes sense. Do I need 1 deputy city manager to go to 100,000 people, or do I need 2? Do I need 50 cops, or do I need 70? Or do I need, that all gets kind of evaluated because that's the net neutrality Jim talked about. If that math ain't mathing to say what my daughter's supposed to be, then this doesn't seem like it can work as much. And that includes the infrastructure costs and everything related to it. So at some point, the net tax revenue has to make sense to all of us, including a tax sharing agreement with the county, right? So remember, we don't just annex and go, peace out everybody, nice knowing you in the county. Like, no, it's a dialogue we have to say, okay, county, this many new people, we think you're going to have this service demand on sheriff, the jail, district attorney, what health and human services impacts will be there. Okay, what's that cost? How do we parse off a revenue share, a proportion of property tax to get you what you need and we what we need, this district what they need, and we kind of, it happens all over. Right? So that's why, and this happens in every city during incorporation 100 years ago, we did these things. So that's why sometimes cities actually are in a bad place that you wouldn't think because those tax sharing agreements never evolved ultimately as they thought. So here's an example. I was the city manager of Clayton. They got 6 cents on the dollar in their tax sharing agreement under their full incorporation because they incorporated in 1975. The later you incorporate it, the later it is. American Canyon's a little bit different. They incorporated later, but the county realized, hey, we want you to be this great city that helps us from jobs and housing and all the things we're talking about. We're going to give you actually more property tax shares to make sure your city's viable. So it is a negotiation. Right now, Suisun City's about 11.7% blended on. That's what we get for every dollar. So this example I always use, on the left side of your property tax bill, 1%. If your house is worth $500,000, you're paying $5,000 in property tax. We do not get $5,000. We get $560 of that. The majority of your money actually goes to the state, the county, who gets 42 cents on the dollar right now from us, and the school district. That is actually where your property tax money sits. So why are all these other sales tax happening? Why do we have user fees? It is because the way state property tax laws work, the cities actually aren't the ones getting the majority of the money. So we have to do other means to get revenue to have that service delivery.
And the only thing I want to add is, in the state of California, if you cannot prove that you can supply water to whatever development you're putting in, you cannot move that development forward. So that is, actually, that's, when I say like, is this even feasible? Can we even move forward? That's actually question number one, can we provide water? So that's at the most basic level of some of the studies to get back to us to see, can we even do that?
Can I just have one follow-up, and that is, do all cities only have one water district, or are there any examples where there are more than one?
So every city has their own different type of, who supplies the water. Most of us use Solano project water, which is like areas. Some of us also have access to the North Bay Aqueduct, which is state water project. Suisun City has access to both. So we primarily have, 100% supplied right now by Lake Berryessa, but we have water rights to the North Bay Aqueduct that we actually are not using right now. So we're currently saving up for what's called an intertie. That's kind of like putting a straw into the pipeline to have access to that water. So we're in a really good, strong position for Suisun water ourselves. Now, I will say that at the most recent Solano County Water Agency meeting, which every mayor and every member of the board of supervisors and every president of all the irrigation districts in Solano County sit on, it's a 15-member board. We just agreed to move forward with doing a study about what would it mean to actually have interties and those connections to each other's water sources where we're currently not accessing water. That is to make Solano County as a region more resilient. That's just a long-term project. That's nothing that's happening right now. It's a long-term project, but we are currently ensuring that our future of our water at the regional level is also safe.
And I think practically, could you have two different water agencies? Yes, you can have some areas have two. Dixon has two. I'll give you an example. The question we would ask the community, and we are going to have a community conversation on infrastructure, so water, sewer. The question becomes, does it make sense to do it that way? Like, is there a competitive advantage to having one system for the whole right there, that economy of scale? Or, much like some areas of cities that are developed, does it make more sense that people that move into that part of the city pay for the new area that they're essentially populating? That will be answered in all of this assessment. It's a good question. Part of it, we'll also want to get feedback from the community, like, do you want to be one major district? Or if it makes more financial sense to everybody, are you okay to split it off? Practically, as the mayor said, there's ways to do interties, there are ways to do a bunch of things on both the sewer and the water side. Now, sewer is slightly different in that state legislation requires that any annexed Fairfield Suisun property becomes part of that sewer district. Now, whether we run a pipe all the way from the expansion to the new sewer treatment plant, it doesn't have the capacity to do it anyways, right? So even though it'll be under one umbrella, my assumption, and I don't have this information yet to us, but it's going to be a second plant right over there, and maybe its own system under the umbrella of the Fairfield Suisun Sewer District. In that case, it's one governmental body, but it's two kind of ways of operating, because that makes the most operational financial sense. So we'll assess that kind of individually, but it can be multiple if needed, and if it makes sense to state law.
I don't know if this is important, but if this is passed, is there an uninterrupted land connection from Suisun directly to the areas? Yes. So I'll use you a little bit as a co-pilot here, which is the connection. I'm going to come up here. Essentially, this area here is when they decided they needed to scale back their project and create that buffer and that distance for all the traffic.
Can you tell how many acres we're looking at?
This connection here is basically 7,000, approximately 7,500 acres. As I mentioned earlier, it will all remain as it is zoning wise in the county. No changes to that. So if you have septic or whatever, you can continue on. So the connection to the city then becomes the eastern flank of the city here, that you see this little area here. This little square, when you ask why is it odd like that, believe it or not, it's rated the city. That's the ball fields as well as the courtyard. So we don't need to annex out. It's pretty annexed. So this area, to your question, based on how I understand it, would be the primary connection going down to the plant area. Hopefully that comes out.
Beyond all that other area in that direction, there's a straight line to the airport base where Suisun City.
Yes, but again, none of this area has any development proceeding, and that is a commitment, and we will lock that in the development agreement. So you're not, this is the buffer that they created, so we're not gonna encroach on the airbase ever, except for this would be the area, the plan area. So there will not be any encroachment on the airbase.
But the physical land is.
It'll just be the same land that you see today. Yeah.
Okay, so we have two questions, one here and the next over here. Yes, I see it. Mhm. Here and the next over here.
Yeah, thank you. My questions are directed to the mayor. In the importance of time, is there any way that you guys could just answer the questions and not give renditions or examples? And it's not only please, I want to hear renditions and examples. Thank you. In regards to, the downtown area, that's already lacking, population and, people coming and visiting our town, how are you going to, give us a guarantee that Suisun City, Marina, downtown area will not become a ghost town when you do this annexation project? And do you have an agreement with California Railroad that they will not allow that to happen? That's my first question.
That's a really great question, and I think one that we contemplated a lot. Suisun City's greatest asset is its waterfront. That has to always remain our visitor center. But this is the front, the front door enters, that is our waterfront. All of the development that we disclosed this last week at City Council, all of it is concentrated in downtown. That's to bring commercial, to bring activity, to bring the foot traffic right into downtown to help our businesses survive. So that's the percentage of the question, is that we are concentrating on marketing downtown, having all our events downtown, uplifting downtown. The second piece is we absolutely will be working to negotiate with California Forever of the investments that come into our downtown. We did so that already when we informed them, like, you cannot come here and think that you're going to build something over on the side and not think that we're not going to lift up the rest of our community. And I think we were very strong on pushing back on that. So strong that the next thing that they did was, on their own, was reach out to our developmental team and say, we would like to invest in downtown Suisun proper and start today. And so that's why they're looking at the 3 properties that they're purchasing. They currently, it was updated this last week, we can provide a quick update of where they are.
Yes. Yeah, so no problem. So we are going to bring hopefully a purchase and sale agreement to the city council with provisions around just, basic things of expectations on timing and things that we expect to get that done. Probably late November, early December is when that would be finalized. To your question, also, the legal mechanism to actually ensure that this happens is in the development agreement, which council will approve as part of the larger package. So essentially what Jim and I have told development forever is that we expect a stair-step approach. We have not started a development agreement by any negotiation yet. The stair-step approach. So you can only start to develop certain areas of the expansion if you invest X, Y, and Z in triple quadrants. And so it will stair-step the entire way up the development over the next 20 years. And so that development agreement is their vested right, as you look it up online. It's their vested right to be able to develop. But these triggers are our hand to force them to say, nope, you got to do X before you can do Y. And that will be the stair step of ensuring current system isn't left behind as I talked about at the very beginning, we wanted to lift the whole community up to do what we wanted to do.
And you asked this is me as a mayor. Look, I'm not interested in expanding out to California forever. It is not in service of our time right now. That's the entire premise of why we asked the question. What do we need to do to save our community? We needed to find a way, an avenue to bring in industry. We need land to do that industry. So 100% that commitment has been shared with our council for just 3 agreements.
So, are you guys doing annexation so that you can overstep what Solano County wants? They're not in favor of California Forever Lost I heard, neither is Fairfield. So are you guys and Rio Vista going to annexation so that you don't have to answer to them?
That's not I would say, most recently, the Board of Supervisors voted 5-0 to work with California Forever directly. Another area of land that they are allowing, well, it's California Forever's land to develop for a different project. So the county has already said, we're working with California Forever now. The city of Fairfield, their mayor has provided a public statement that they're interested in working with California Forever specifically for an industry on defense. They want California Forever to bring in investments on defense to support Travis Edwards. They want those investments in the city of Fairfield. And the city of Vacaville, their mayor has come out with their public statement about working already. They're working directly with California Forever. So I would say California Forever, for those who may not be aware, has been buying that piece of land, those lands around since 2017. In less than 2 years or so, they will have been in our county for about a decade now. And so in that process, they've been doing the work with other cities and other agencies to build in how do they work with each one. That's California Forever's business. Suisun's business is, what are we going to do to safeguard our community? And this is an opportunity that will not come again. And
then one last question.
Why didn't she get to ask her question?
I'm almost done, sorry. So if the recall ever goes forth and you guys are removed, does that contract stay in force with California?
We're not here to talk about recall, I'm sorry.
Excuse me, it's not your question.
Say, forum,
I'll answer the question.
She can answer the question.
The answer is yes, because an agreement is an agreement, legal agreement regardless of, every 2 years, council changes. So it doesn't matter who's on the dais, once you've entered into an agreement legally, it remains until the completion of that agreement, right? There are clauses for both agencies, California Forever and Suisun City, to walk away from that agreement if they so wish. But there are specific things that need to be met in order for that to happen. But to answer your question is, yes, the agreement stays in place.
Let's do, please, I'd like everyone to please raise their hand for the hands. Excuse me, here. And then the next one is over here on the right hand side. Is that a question? So over here on the right hand side.
I have 2 questions. I don't know if you can hear me.
No, louder, please, louder.
On the map, on that 17,000 acres that you said you want to annex, how much of California Forever's land does that comprise? Is that a quarter of it? Half of it? All of
It's a
it?
quarter. 15,000 is about a quarter, slightly less than a quarter. They own almost 70,000 total acres in the county.
Okay, so it's a quarter of California Forever's land. What they bought. Okay, second question, does Suisun still owe the state of California redevelopment money back?
So that's through property tax swap, so it's not like debt like your mortgage would be. The way redevelopment worked way back when is essentially they swapped how property tax is distributed. That still continues today. As those bonds get paid off over time, it means just more share of total property tax gets dispersed back to us. But it's not like it's a bill we get in and then we go pay it from some general fund revenue sources. It's all managed by the way property tax share is distributed throughout the city.
Okay, so we're not servicing the interest on that debt.
You are, but there's nothing you can do about it regardless of everything else. It's built into what happened 25 years ago with redevelopment and how they redistributed property tax.
Okay, so it's not going to come out of the city's coffers.
Not a general fund. When I say general fund, I mean discretionary true property tax that the council has discretion over, sales tax, TOT fees. Now, we don't pay it out of that source. Like, we balance the general fund budget, there isn't a ROPS interest payment. That's a different property tax swap that happens in different funds, still managed and controlled by the council. It's just in a totally separate, not usable for anything else but paying back ROPS expenses and related debt.
Has any of us been taken back yet?
It is every year, so we have been paying it back since they started using it 20 years ago. It's just happened over time. They've elongated it, the state has, to make it easier on all cities that have had what you might hear called successor agencies, is how the redevelopment died in 2012. I will bore all of you if I continue to go on this, but it's really a never see your tax dollar that comes to Suisun for Suisun services doesn't go to pay for that.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Okay, any questions back here?
I want to ask questions of the people in the room. I want to ask questions of the people that are opposed or, I mean, it's disgruntled about California forever. I'm not in support of or I'm against, but my question to you all is raise your hand if you have the money to save Suisun. If you have the money to save.
Neither does Suisun.
I'm sorry?
Neither does Suisun doesn't have the money either. This is the way to get it. No.
So
They're
California forever.
bankers for the apartment building now.
Excuse me, let's
I'm
hear.
going to raise your hand.
Yeah.
No voices needed. Raise your hand if you have a plan or the money.
Can't really explain with the raise of a hand.
I don't like, what sense does that make?
It makes no sense.
I'm sorry.
It makes no sense. It makes no sense.
Of course, you don't have the money, I don't have the money, the question is, are we letting?
Collectively, do we have? No.
So that makes it okay?
Makes it okay for this.
I mean, you started a
A
conversation
plan?
with, you know, everybody in here.
It's a plan, right?
It's a plan that the residents of Suisun were not considered. You were not allowed to have any kind of input. We can.
No. We voted city council in, to do their job and help guide the city. It is a democracy. I would expect every decision city council makes to come to the ballot. I voted in my representatives.
All I'm saying is that should be up to you on the ballot. If
Not
you
every
voted
decision.
enter-
But this is a big decision.
That's a very big
This is
decision.
too big a decision.
Yeah.
This wasn't thrown out when they were elected. This is something above and beyond.
And I will say this. One of the most important things for me is that you have to, first of all, I have a business degree. I was in my upper division coursework after Enron happened. We've seen what happens in corporate entities where they're not supporting their communities. Have we all seen it? Yeah. We've seen a lot of examples. I've had a direct conversation with the CEO of California Forever. Been very blunt and very direct with them that social corporate responsibility is an ethos and philosophy I stand behind. You can't bring a developer, doesn't matter who they are, if they're not contributing back to your community and raising the well-being of your community itself. But you have to negotiate that. It's a business decision too. If we had the other alternative we have, as you've been very sure of at City Council, is to extend our tax measures to our residents in perpetuity. I'm not willing to do that. I'm sorry. I think we already pay too many taxes. Okay? We have to figure out a way of how do we reduce the cost to all of our utilities. How do we reduce the cost of having to continuously go back to the voters and say, let me increase your taxes? That's not sustainable. Let me tell you about Highway 12. Myself, along with the mayors of Rio Vista, the mayors of Fairfield, Travis Air Force Base, Caltrans, Mountain Transportation Authority, and other agencies are currently studying Highway 12. The last time Highway 12 was studied was in 2009. I was reading that report. You know what it says? It identified the two poorest cities in Sonoma County. Guess who they were? Suisun and Rio Vista. Okay? 2025. In 4 years, less than 4 years, we will have held that position for 20 years. As a city leader who has access to all of these reports and all of these meetings that I have to go to with all of the other agencies, it would be irresponsible to not look at every way that we need to enhance the quality of life for our residents, uplift our community, and fix the finances forever. Okay? I'll go back to, they never fixed the finances. They just want to tax our residents. They didn't bring development to offset. Our most recent master economic development plan shows that even if you do all the info, which means developing within the empty lots, we still will not have all the revenues that we need for the long term. Now, this isn't for tomorrow, for next year. You know, it might, by the time the first shovel comes into the ground, you know, it might be 10 years, 5 years, I don't know. But I do know that I have a newspaper from 1979. Mayor Black was the mayor of Suisun City at that time. And in that article, he's warning the town, he's warning the residents. He's saying, Highway 12 is coming. Highway 12 is coming. Downtown Suisun is going to be hurt. We need to fix our waterfront. We need to fix, we need to protect. And what happened? Highway 12 came, they bifurcated both downtown communities. To this day, both downtowns haven't fully recovered. Right? I can see from a mayor who was here in 1979 how he foreshadowed what will happen to his community if something doesn't change. I can see it from everything that I'm looking at, that in 50 years, if we don't do something about fixing Suisun City's finances, protecting the land on its side to safeguard it for our future, no one's going to come and save us. No one's giving us land. We're absolutely negotiating. Do you think it's easy to negotiate with this entity who has a lot of resources? No, we got to punch above a rate every single time and stand our ground about what we're willing to move forward with and what we're willing to not move forward with. Because social corporate responsibility always has to be at the center. And when we say business is going to come to town, it has to benefit us. It has to benefit our children. If not, then why are we doing this? Right? Now, I welcome people going like, I still don't like. We have to have those voices too. Why? Because we have to keep any agency that's working with us accountable to saying that they're going to complete what the commitments that they're going to do for our community, 100%. And we need to hear the concerns that are coming, because that's what goes back to the team. What other consultants that we need to work with, what other data we need to show. If you're saying this is a really great introduction, but I need more of this, that's exactly what we need to take back and bring back to the next presentation. It talks about water. That was a question I had today. Talks about, well, what is the relationship with the county? We can talk about that too. So having your input and feedback is how we make this presentation real. We're not here and interested in just showing information. We're really interested about like what's the issue? How do we navigate this forward? Because what we can't have Suisun do is collapse on itself. And that's the road that we've been on for too long. So hopefully, I know that was a little bit of a, and I'm happy. I have open office hours at City Hall almost every day. Happy to sit down and go through it, and actually happy to sit down with the vice mayor and other members. So we make sure we're addressing the real issues and concerns of the
We have time for one, maybe two more questions. So I see a hand right here, and then next the one in the back of the room.
Can you hear me? First, I just want to say thank you for the presentation and for hosting this first community meeting after almost a year. I appreciate you starting it now. And my question is, one of the challenges that was presented on the presentation was upfront and unknown costs for utilities, for public services, for infrastructure for this project if it moves forward. And so my question is, where is that going to, who's going to be paying for that cost? As we said, this is going to be a 50-year plus development plan. Things aren't going to be built overnight. A new community is not going to appear overnight, and the workforce, probably coming from the area, is not going to appear overnight. And so as this is being built over the course of 50 years, who is going to be footing that bill when we don't have a tax base yet? Is this not going to increase our existing debt? I think there's a false or an incomplete narrative being put out, and that is either or narrative. Either we do this and then we survive, or we don't do this and we go on. I don't think that's a full complete picture. What is your plan C? What if this doesn't go through? And I'm not finished. Sure. So what is your plan C? What if we got to annexation? How will you all work to save the city? There must be other options. It's not black and white.
So.
And further, sorry, almost finished. And so, like I said, it's not a black or white picture. The false narrative is that this will save our city. I don't think that's a concrete fact. That is not fact. That's the narrative that's being pushed. But in actuality, we don't know for sure this is put us into further, deeper debt, larger debt than we are in already. And how is that going to pay for the existing needs that we have right now? The residents right now.
So, sorry, you good?
Are you good?
One more thing, sorry.
I want to make sure we get all the last few
We let them answer the question.
Yes, sorry, just one more point. And I understand the talking point about jobs. Jobs, everyone needs jobs, that's the thing, right? However, you're talking about a tech city, so obviously there's going to be a lot of tech jobs. And if you look at our current existing community, is our community fit to take on those jobs? How are you going to be training our current community to make sure that we get those jobs and not people from the broader Bay Area coming in to take those jobs? And manufacturing, same thing. AI, that's all automation. How are you going to guarantee that it's actually going to be using labor from our current existing community and not from outside communities?
So, I'm trying to get them all. I'm trying to miss some of that. Sorry, but I'll try to cover it all. So, I think the first thing is, when we use words like false narrative, I think I would love to see everybody just refrain from that, because here's the reality with that. I've been doing this for 15 years in this industry at a very high level in many different cities. I can tell you, we have analyzed what Suisun can be. Remember what I talked about, like, you can't go 20 stories high, developers don't do it. We've hired some of the best economic development consultants, Osmond companies, to do an analysis and brought to council in March, to basically start to discuss, like, hey, what is Plan B? What is Plan C? How does this all work together? What if we don't annex? And as I said back then, and I'll say today, there is actually, yes, there is a reality where this is black and white. I can probably give through development for the city, with the development director, up to enough development and sales, property tax, and TOT increases at the, like I said, 15 projects that are going through at one time, which is massive, by the way. It isn't normal in a 30,000 community. I live in Benicia. I don't think we've had 2 development projects like that in 20 years. We're trying to do 15 and 5. I mean, we can as developers. But the height of doing that gets us to about $40 million in today's dollars. Obviously, inflation and things, that goes up over time. But that is a cap. Like, there is no more way. Like, I can tear down some old buildings with developers and rebuild it. The delta of the property tax increase, the sales tax increase, TOT increase, is really anywhere between 5 to 8 million if everything gets done at the highest level to get us to 40 million. 40 million isn't enough. So what happens to our community? Well, at that level, we're probably got enough new revenue, assuming Measure S has to then stay in perpetuity, to maybe not dissolve at that point in the city, but the service level goes from today lower. And that means that you have many more issues than you have today are going to continue, because the cost of service, no matter what you do, is going to rise, and we're not going to be able to keep up with it from a revenue standpoint. So this is a little bit of a binary question in, yes, if we don't expand, Suisun will not be what it is today. And that's in a negative direction, not a positive. There is not a shining star. There is not other land to develop. I can actually tax you to the height if I put out ballot measures on parcel tax and sales tax, but the likelihood of those passing at the level they would need to sustain us is not realistic. So there is some binary yes or no to this conversation. I think when we talk about jobs, and then I'll get to the infrastructure question, when we talk about jobs, so actually it's not going to be tech jobs. It's going to be tech-related advanced manufacturing jobs that we are working with, and we've been talking in great depth with the head of the trade unions We have all 15 trade unions ready to roll, including affiliates, to come in and do jobs around advanced manufacturing where you don't actually need a college degree. You need a high school degree. These are the jobs where you actually get trained by the organizations. And after 2 to 3 years of being an apprentice in those organizations, you're going to be making six-figure salaries. We see that today in these industries. Those industries are what we are courting to come here with them. Those are the letter of intents that Jim's talked about. They're there. It's those type of industries, which is Solano County, which is Suisun City, right? That is what we have, and that is what we're pushing to. That's why shipbuilding makes sense in the conversation regionally, because those are those type of jobs. It's not, my job would probably not exist in 15 years because some AI bots can do a hell of a lot better, right? There is a lot of jobs in the white collar industry, we'll call it, they're going away in 15 years. What we do need is technical people that know how to turn our wrench in a really good way. That is what we need, and that is Solano County. It is the history of our community. My family has been here since 1905. That is the history of Solano County. So we are looking at tech pro jobs, although yes, there are tech billionaires, investors that do this, that yes, there are going to be some tech people that probably create industry here. That's not the foundation. We're building, as part of this, we are pushing an industry first, as you mentioned, way over this. Now around infrastructure, so part of what the EIR and the fiscal analysis will tell you is how the developer is going to pay for that infrastructure, right, and how that will work. There's not going to be a bill we're going to lock to all of you under the current tax base to do it. We've told them they've got to make it work. However they do that, right? Whether that's through themselves, whether that's support from the industry partners that are coming in to do it, however they need to get there, it can't be your burden. As Jim mentioned, that's net neutrality reality that we're looking to get to them. I don't have all that information yet because we haven't gotten all those technical studies, and I don't want to presume or assume something that I don't have in front of me. One thing I want to bring up on this too, and I know we have the last question, is everyone will always point to the county's report. Well, the county did this whole report already, and it said this, and it said that. So I'm going to tell you, this is no disrespect to my county colleagues, but there is no way in 60 days you can do a report that's comprehensive and real enough to tell me that that's accurate. That is just not realistic. You can't do it on a 20 housing subdivision that quickly. You're not going to be able to do it on the scope and scale of this. So I would say let our studies come out, let the information come out, let our EIR come out, all the things that are going to be coming to answer all of these questions. Let's wait. Let's read that data, and instead of making assumptions on what could or could be there or what should or should be there, let's look at the factual information from experts and figure out, okay, what works and what doesn't work. And then I think it's an informed conversation in a way that can be really fruitful dialogue. And so that's my kind of sincere hope and ask, I guess, is like, hey, that's coming. It's going to be months away, but it's coming. Let's maybe hold on to those assumptions until that day comes to that information.
And I'm just going to follow up in regards to the job training and we have to qualify individuals to take on the lead jobs and wage studies. So yesterday we were actually in a meeting with the Solano County Workforce Development Board. They came, they requested, they wanted to give us information on the jobs, data, and the industries that are going to be very important. We have very robust conversations. You know, they're already preparing, they're planning, they're looking at what type of assets that we need, what type of job training that we need, so that we can really truly upskill our local community so that they can take on these jobs that are within their own community. So the conversations that we had all across the community, from the Workforce Development Board, from the trades to unions, to the Economic Development Board to Solano County, this is not a siloed approach. Everybody is at the table while we're going through this journey. So I just wanted to follow up on that.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I'd love to, you keep us in the loop as those types of meetings happen. And I just want to, again, circle back to the point that the statement that this annexation will save Suisun City's financial situation is not a concrete fact. You can't say that for sure when the businesses, the buildings haven't been built, people are there yet living. That's not a concrete fact. So I think that's part of the misconception that this will save Suisun City as a certainty. Who's to say that we will go into further debt, like I said. So that's still, I think that's a gray area, so it's not black and white.
And I think I love your question, and I think that's a really great one to take back to provide a more comprehensive overview of what it takes to even run our current city, with almost an $8 million need for dredging, for example, the hundreds of millions of dollars just to fix our current roads, and all of the, like, it's really, really expensive. So one of the things, to your point, is for us to come back with better practice of how you arrived to that conclusion. And I think what you're pointing to is, I hear you, but I don't see it, nor do I buy it. And I think that's some fair feedback. So we'll take it back this way.
Okay, we have time for the last question, and then I said for the Q&A.
Are there any environmental groups that support this? That's one question. Two, in addition to not being a guarantee that this will save the city, you're making the argument that if you don't do it, the city's done. Services are over, tumbleweeds in the streets, death and devastation. I mean, it sounds pretty dire, either California forever or, the city's over. I mean, you wouldn't believe that. And then finally, California forever, when they put this on the ballot, they made a lot of promises. And then they pulled it off the ballot because it wasn't very public. They then said they were going to come back and they were going to do the right way, they were going to the county, they were going to do all proper processes. And now they're doing what appears to be an end run. That's how it's perceived. They're doing an end run, and you guys are allowing them to do it. Now the question is, how can you trust a company like that, that's doing an end run on the people of the county by going to a small city that views itself as on the verge of death and destruction, tumbleweeds in the streets? How do you trust a company like that? I remember they promised a big swimming pool. I look forward to that too. Well, that's a good swim. You're in a swimming pool?
We won't be able to get in there.
Oh, that's right. We're not allowed to get in that swimming pool. So understand why the people in the room here have a great deal of distrust for California forever. Because, I speak for myself, I feel like they've lied to me. And I feel now that they're lying to me through you, and you're allowing it to happen. And I further ask the question, are there any job opportunities for you in California forever after this is done? Is there anything that we need to know about that's not on the table? Please let us know.
So I think I can start with a few things. So number one, I'm going to be honest with you, it's a little insulting to ask that we're sitting here doing something on the table.
Hey, this happened in Vallejo. This happened in Vallejo. You saw it happen in Vallejo. The city managers are like in the middle of the night. So don't play out there.
I just think you have people that have had dedicated 30-year careers, 16-year careers. They don't even really make a lot of money to be on the council at all, stipend based. That are doing this. I mean, just let's practically think about it. All the more reason not. I think that's in today's world that with zero facts to support any of that last comment. Hold on, it's a very destructive thing to say, and
if you're going to say my comments are destructive, I'm going to counter your point.
Did I finish? Do you mind? I appreciate it. Thank you. I just think it's irresponsible and creates a narrative that I think doesn't help the dialogue in today's world, and I think that can be very dangerous in today's world. So hold on. So that's one. So I think number two is none of us trust California. I can tell you my council doesn't trust them. I can tell you my deputy city manager doesn't trust them. I can tell you I don't trust them. I think it's our job.
Why would you not put on the
Hold on.
Everybody, one question at a time, please.
It is our job to not trust them, right? That is our job to do this because our job is to the people in Suisun City to try to make the best future, right? And so the reason why we talk about this as binary is, yes, there will be a very different Suisun. There'll be prettier buildings up, but the revenue will not be able to keep us sustainable. That is a factual reality that we have talked about over and over and over again in council meetings over the last 12 months. And that's a reality. And what we're saying is, and we've talked about all this evening, is we know we need a tax measure, we know we need an infill, and now we're going to see if expansion can happen because we think that's the way that we actually sustain ourselves for 30 years. But you've heard us all say, if it's approved, if this works out, if the fiscal impact tells us that this actually can do what we need it to do, right? We're waiting for all of that data from all these experts to come in to have these conversations. So no one's presuming that it's a done deal. No one's also presuming that it's going to work, but our basis is we think it can. Our hypothesis is we believe it can. And as the mayor said, it would be irresponsible for us to see this opportunity, to see what it could be for Suisun, as missed out in Green Valley, as missed out in Buzzweiser, missed out in Jelly Belly, and just ignore it and let it fly by. And remember, they said they were going to go back to the county. For whatever reason, the county didn't absorb that in right away. But the county would take them through a very similar EIR process that we are, in fact, not identical. So we are making them go through the paces. We are slowing them down in some sense of the word because they have to go through our EIR process, our annexation process. So by no means is it an end around. In fact, we are going to control it more from local control to do this to ensure that the experts are pushing on that. I'm going to tell you, some people have said, well, we want a public vote under Measure T. Okay, fair. You realize if that vote passes, if it were to happen, then your control, all the oversight we're talking about, all these experts pushing on them, gone.
You can specify so you still have control.
But that's not the way that was going to be put out. And so I'm saying what we're trying to do is get control of them so we can do what's best for Suisun City. And so we focus also on the region. So we're not losing my colleagues and other city managers. We're talking about what regional benefits can happen. What things like fire districts could be countywide. What things like Fairfield Suisun Unified School District, which benefits Fairfield, can grow from the education standpoint. Is there ways for the sheriff to have a regional command facility with us that makes sense for the county? There's so many ways that we can tap into regional benefit. But again, it's doing it because it's what's best for Suisun, it's what's best for the region as a whole. We're not trying to do it because it's best for California. We don't sit here trusting them like we wouldn't any developer. Remember, we deal with developers all day long in what we do. Not one of them do we go in with saying, oh, absolutely, they're trying to just help us out, and they have some altruistic, wonderful view of not wanting to make money on their own. Obviously, that's the reality. And our job is to find the balance between getting everything we need for a sustainable 50 years, 100 years, and what we're going to do here, but also understand that developers work and our entire society has been built because they also do make money. Like, it has to be a balance. It doesn't need to be like this. That's crazy. But it also can't be where the city gets everything and the developer can't pencil because guess what? Nothing will ever happen anywhere ex-California forever. You just won't ever see development happen. So it's a balance that we're weighing. But I can tell you, with my reputation and my staff's reputation, we don't trust them. That's why we're doing the work in the way we're doing it, and that's why we're trying to have these dialogues, to try to understand what you guys want us to look into, what you're concerned about, so we can press on those issues as we kind of go forward in the process.
The first question was, were there any environmental groups that support this?
Not that I've talked to specifically, but again, that's special interest on all sides of the aisle, right? So there are plenty of economic groups that say this is the greatest thing ever, right? Like, so, I mean, I think our job is not to go on both sides of the extreme, right? Our job is to figure out what's real, what's factual in the middle of all that.
But you just said there's not one environmental group that supports this, so it doesn't sound like you're in the middle on that. They're all against it.
No, but what I'm saying is, there are many projects where I have all the economic development experts telling me this is the greatest thing to do on this side. I have some environmental groups saying that we shouldn't do this on this side. What I'm saying is the middle is where we need to find the answer between the two.
Right,
because neither extreme is correct.
So you then do have some environmental groups that support this.
Even if I don't, I'm saying it's our job to find the middle ground between both, because those polar extremes not help with the direction.
And I just kind of want to follow up in regards to the ballot initiative. I think all of us were very frustrated going through the whole process of hearing about California Forever and all this. Like, our council never thought we were going to be here. This was not on our veto plan. As we went through the process following where the county was going, we've seen that the ballot initiative, we've seen the campaign, we've seen all of that. Suisun City was just stood back for like, wow, this is crazy, this is happening. The reality is our leadership and our board of supervisors had California Forever in their conversations through their process, pull the ballot initiative to do further studies so they can come back to the county with a more robust EIR to really identify, and then the plan was to stay on the same timeline and come back either for them to vote to approve the project or they can go to a ballot initiative. They had two choices there. We were never in conversations. This all organically happened as we were trying to go out, because it's never been about California Forever. This is about what Suisun needs, and us not passing up an opportunity for potential growth to secure our future. So I just kind of wanted to highlight that, because there's also, we hear the information, oh, well, the voters voted against it. It never went to the ballot.
Well,
It was approved by the board of
They
supervisors.
wouldn't take it to the ballot.
They told it to
Because
get more
they're gonna get their asses
information,
kicked.
and that potentially could have been correct. But the reality is California Forever is the largest landowner here in in Solano County. They're not going anywhere. So if it's through this process of a city, two cities looking to explore an annexation, or if it's through the county, the reality is that they're here, they're not leaving. So we decided,
They can keep going to farmland.
because we're not gonna sit in the background and not have at least an opportunity to see regional and economic growth for our community, because they're not leaving, they're here to stay. And
To your statement, if I can just interject, do you agree with the moral standpoint in which way Flannery forever, Flannery, whatever, California forever, you guys, right, acquired this land? Instead of last landlord, do you agree with that?
as we both, and the city manager have all mentioned, we have all been frustrated. We have representatives here with California Forever. I've expressed my, upset and opposition in the approach that they've done it, and I think they've realized and recognized. They came out the way that they did, it was not within.
So why are you entertaining the investment in Kingdom?
And they're not going anywhere.
So?
Yes,
Please.
You don't have to entertain it.
Here's the reality. California Forever is going to have a city. Maybe in the next 5 years, 10, 15, there will be a city there. Rio Vista and I remember having this conversation with them. We were here first. Our cities were here first. The potential of having a city in between us completely encroach into our communities and take away any opportunity for us to actually receive any benefit from that or have it control is actually something that is really concerning for us.
Okay, so before everyone leaves, I do want to let you know, in the interest of time, in the back, there are flyers that will give information about the next meeting that we hope everybody will attend in October, as well as information on how you can stay in the loop on all of it, as well as a link to a questionnaire from tonight's meeting. So we want to make sure you guys have that information and take that with you, and we'll see you in October. Thank you.
I love California forever. I love the fact that they're willing to come in here and help Suisun. Thank you, Mike. Yes. If you guys don't help, nobody else will. Right on. I love you.
Reach out to the next conversation. I heard the best. Yeah, that's something that. Yeah. Absolutely.